Hello, family. I am here on what some consider Christmas Eve, the eve of the winter solstice, um, December 24th. And I had every intention um, not to come on here until after it was over. I'm sorry, excuse me. But I saw something that just absolutely made it possible for me not to come on here and talk about, as you see from the title, Jada Pinkett Smith's Red Table Talks Turn Gray. I don't do social media in that respect, like for personal reasons or anything like that. If I'm doing something, it has to do with something. And someone told me about it, and I just couldn't believe the extent of how it was explained to me. So, me being who I am, I went on to look at it myself, where she had Jane Elliott on there speaking. And I'll take notes or so that I don't forget things when I get ready to upload my videos and things like that. But that wasn't the case this time. This time I cannot miss an issue. Okay, it was just so over the top that one it was just it has to be touched upon by someone. And first I'm going to do it so that the most layman can understand, and then I'm going to come back and do an even more scientific uh, explanation of what this particular conversation or red table talk, if you will, oh God, explored. Okay, so first of all, um, she spoke about um, well, there was another lady on there first. Okay, so when she was on there, she made some sort of a statement, obviously stating that she didn't know what it was like to be black or something to that effect. So before Jane Elliott even sat down, she said, "What do you mean you don't know about being black or what it is to be black?" As if she does, which she does not. Okay, and the first thing that we need to stop doing is praising white people for not being racist. Okay, praising white people for taking a stand, for not doing things that are wrong, for not spitting on us. And they're not supposed to do that anyway. Why should you be praised for breastfeeding your child? You're supposed to do that anyway. You know, you're not supposed to say, oh, well, this person is giving their child formula and this person is breastfeeding. Oh, they should be praised. No, that's what you call normal. And we go right back to etymology because the word formula, they're telling you it's a formula. You don't give a baby a formula. A formula is something that is manufactured in a lab. But we're not going to go straight into that. Then she asked the lady, she goes, can you read? And she goes, yes, I can read. And they go on and on. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Okay. So she said, forget about, she said, the other white lady says, I should do better. And this, that, and the third. And Jane comes back and says, uh, put all that on the shelf, what you should do. It's about what you are going to do. What you are going to do is a bunch of BS too, because all of it's in the future. All of it is not at hand. None of it has manifested itself. None of it. Okay. And like again, we need to stop rewarding white folks for not being racist. Now let's look at the issue in the term race, going back to racism, going back to etymology. The root word of racism is race. Okay, what does race mean as we know it? Race means two or more people competing to get to the next point before the other person or people. That's a race. And that's exactly what it is. It's an ism. It's a race of humanities or different races of people, different peoples racing to get to the next point before the other races do. So there are more than one race, which they say there's only one race, which is the human race. If I have One drop of strychnine versus a pitcher of strychnine. If I put enough water in that one drop of strychnine, once so much water gets into that pitcher, like a pitcher, pitcher, you cannot call it strychnine anymore. It can have enough water in it that it dilutes it to a point where it doesn't even have to be considered poison anymore because the active ingredient, which is poison, is no longer what? The key term, active. It's deactivated by the water. So she starts to explain how she's a light skinned black person and how we all derive from Africa. BS again. That goes back to the analogy with the strychnine and the water. Once you have so many people, so in the near the equator in Africa, once you have, oh, we're going to call it the equator because Africa isn't even the real term for that particular uh, mass of land or land mass, if you will. Once you start to populate, it would only make sense for people to begin to migrate. Okay, so they begin to migrate in all geographical directions. Now, when they started to migrate, the ones that they, and this is the way it went down, the ones that they began to cause to be nomads first were the ones who were the lightest. Okay, so they start to go and move. And they kept going until they moved towards a climate that was very, very cold. So they began to conform. We back to the law of conformity. They began to conform to their environment because it was cold. Okay, so karma is always going to come back. Okay, so once they set up their civilizations and things like that, and they come back to where they were ousted from, which is the equator, that's the karma that we have gotten from ousting them in the first place. But it's only natural that you become nomadic when you do it. However, when the karma, if you will, came back upon us with a litany of other things that we're not going to go into right now, when they had their time to dominate or to be in the dominant seat, they went overboard. They were overzealous with it. Why were they overzealous? Because once they moved to those colder climates, not only does the skin become lighter, but the pineal gland starts to become more calcified. Once the pineal gland starts to become more calcified, they start to have lack of sun, a lack of sunlight. And with that lack of sunlight, one starts to decrease in melanin. And what melanin really is what the sun is composed of, which is carbon, which is black or coal. So once they start to deteriorate in the pineal gland, it starts to decalcify, and then their carbon, their melanin, which is actually their soul, starts to deplete. Then they start to become more animalistic. They become less human. They become less amorous. They become less affectionate and caring. They lose all of their sense of humanity. They lose it all. So then when they come back and try to commingle with us and we allow them to do that, it's like, who are these people? We don't understand having to kill in order to eat. We don't understand that. And they have a totally different mentality to a point where they actually lack the soul. And the soul is a secret code word coming from the book of Second Kings from the Bible, which is called King Solomon. King Solomon never even existed. King Solomon or Solomon is just simply the soul of man, which everyone has. Every melanated person has. But if you deplete that pineal gland, it will exit. Now, it can be argued that everyone has melanin, but the same way that that can be argued, as we go back to the analogy with the strychnine, once you put so much water in it and dilute it, it's almost as if it never existed because it actually, at that point, it does not exist. Okay, so they go on, and she starts talking about how um, white supremacy is a myth. White supremacy is not a myth. She needed to explain herself a lot more vividly, a lot more clearly, I should say, because it was extremely ambiguous. White supremacy is a myth in the sense that whites are not superior to us, but don't say that white supremacy is a myth because some people or someone is going to listen to that and think that she means that white supremacy doesn't exist, which is not the case. Now, I'm only assuming, I'm trying to help the lady out. I'm assuming that that's what she meant. I'm hoping she wasn't trying to convey that white supremacy doesn't exist or it's so outlandish that we shouldn't even take issue with it. Okay. It was a big situation. No, I have to, you can't just break someone down and not give them any type of, you know, props when they do something or say something. Now, one thing she did say that was right was when she said that education was actually indoctrination. Now, that is true. It's an indoctrination process so that they can start dumbing you down and, as I've said before, emptying out your hard drive so that they can put in the software that they want to put into your motherboard. Okay. That's what school is all about. Then it went on to say how she went on. They went on to say how um, she said that black people were here in North America 4,000 years before Columbus was born. They keep saying 4 to 5,000 years. They keep harping on that number. They won't go over 6,000 years when they start to talk about these sorts of things. Why? I'll tell you why. Because of the fact that the white man, the Caucasian, does not have any history prior to that. He didn't exist before that. We, melanated people, black people, our history goes back trillions of years. And then she even talked about how women were the first ones on this planet, but she didn't, black women were the first people to inhabit this planet, but she didn't elaborate on it. I had intended to talk about that, but because this came up, I decided to just touch on it and then come back later. Yes, we were the only ones who inhabited this planet at a particular time. And she said that they were her ancestor as well. That is not the case. Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam proposed that it was a Frankenstein type thing where black people actually went into a lab and invented white people the way that they're doing now with these clones. I'm just giving you the information. Okay. But I don't want to go away from what's scientific. I don't want to do that. Um, White people actually have, the Caucasian has a gene variant that they share with the chimpanzee. A chimpanzee does not share that same gene variant with black people. That's why there's so much in common with the chimpanzee and anything that has a common ancestor with the chimpanzee and white people, like the long torso. Okay, they have long torsos, short legs, and big hairy bodies. Shave them down, they're white. Thin lips, all that sort of thing. We don't have that. We have long legs and short torsos, and it's just things that we don't have that common ancestor. We don't share that. Okay, and then there's the issue of the Rh negative. Okay, we don't have that with the Rh negative and Rh positive. Once a white person and a black person start to, and I always refer to us as brown. Okay, because if you ask me, the two races are black and white, point blank, period. Okay, because there's too much science to negate other information. So I just try to make it as simple as possible and not either you're black or you're white, period. And then we'll work out where you fall later. Okay, if you have to question whether or not you're black, then you're white. We're gonna just do it like that. Okay, so moving right along, um, it's just so much. We as black people, again, please know that I always say brown, are indigenous to the equator. That's where we are supposed to be. And that's why we don't function well here in North America. We don't breed well here in North America, but we are chameleons. We absolutely adhere to the law, conformity in all situations, in all issues we do. Okay. Um, she went on to talk about how there was only one race, which was the human race. BS. Um, the reason, and they talked about if I'm not mistaken, they talked about the ratio, about how the number of black people in this country is starting to increase, and it is. We've always had the numbers globally, but not locally or nationally. We because we're spread out all over the place. The reason why they're trying to jump on the bandwagon is because they know we're about to take over again. That's the reason why they have that black woman over there in England, because they know that they're about to become extinct, and they're doing whatever they can to survive, whatever it is, whatever it takes. But they don't want what they call a pure brown girl over there. So let's get a nice little mulatto, if that's what you want to call it. Okay, but we know that that's a black girl over there. Um, and again, I keep zeroing in to the fact that they keep talking about 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 years ago, because they can't go back any further than that. They can't. They don't have that history. We've been here over 3 million years. Now, I have to admit, I'll be the first one to admit that I do not have the date of the original woman. I do not have the date of the original human. I don't have it, but I know that it's longer than that. Now, that much I do know. That I can be sure to assure you that that is the case. Um, Let me see. I wanted to hit that. And I also want to say that I was very disappointed in the regular panel. Jada Pinkett Smith, her mom, and Willow. And I love them all. I used to hang out with Jada many, many years ago. We had a mutual friend who lived in Bel Air. Go figure how things unfold, because at that time she wasn't with Will, but he was the first prince of Bel Air at that time. And we used to hang out. Nice girl, please don't misunderstand. Really nice lady. But of the three of them, of the tandem, I think I have to say I'm more disappointed in Willow. Why? Because I know that this generation are indigo children. I know that she has a lot of knowledge, and I know that in her gut she knew that that information was incorrect. Not that they should disrespect their guests, but don't let the show wind down with your audience believing that you believe that, because oftentimes people believe that silence is assent. Okay. And second, I would have to say I was most secondly disappointed in Jada's mom, because her being the age that she is, having gone through what she's gone through, having, during the time of civil rights, having maybe grandparents or grandparents who were slaves. I just can't see how they set mute like that. Jada probably would be the only one that I would give a pass in that one. Okay. And even in her soul, she'd have to know that that wasn't right, that that was information that was not facts. Okay. I think that Jane has good intentions. I think she does. But just because someone has good intentions, because they do good things, and then they err at some point, that does not mean that you don't call them on it. That doesn't mean that. You have to call them on there. I'm not going to say call on her bullshit, but I'm going to say call her on her erroneous statements, because that's what they were. Um, Let me see. It's okay to have an opinion, but you have to make certain that your audience, whomever you're speaking with, understands the difference between opinions and facts, because opinions are not facts. And you have to make that clear. And I do my best to try and do that on this channel. Um, let's see. Um, we talked about how brown people are swiftly coming the majority, and because of that they're frightened, and the reason why they're frightened is because they did us so cold-blooded, and they think that we're going to retaliate and be retaliatory in the same magnitude or the same way. Well, we are just not built that way. And don't get me wrong, we can get in some butt, but I mean it has to be. I mean, I don't even know if you can get with someone adversely in a humane way, but you can defend yourself. That's just absolutely necessary. It's required by the universe to protect oneself, regardless of that. Martin Luther King, nonviolent, this, that, and that's some bullshit. The universe says to protect yourself. That's first. Let me see. Uh, Now, all these things that I'm saying that are in terms of the RH negative, RH positive, and the variant gene that they have in common with the chimpanzee, I didn't say this. This is scientific facts. I just want to make that clear. And if anyone finds that I'm remiss, hey, comment below, subscribe, like, do whatever you want, thumbs up. Let me know. We can hit it and see what's going on. Okay. Um, I just can't believe that that they sat there and let her talk like that. I don't know. And then she so get ready for this. Then she said, if there's anyone in here who's biracial, stand up. And I think they all stood up and she said, didn't I just tell you there's only one race, the human race? And they all acted as though they were being chastised. I'm like, what the hell? Let me tell you what happens. When a white person has a child with a brown person and they quote unquote procreate, the genes in the black person is so dominant that it causes the genes of the white person to lie dormant. That is why when you have a white person or a Caucasoid person come together with, by the way, back to really quick, I just want to insert etymology. Why would they call Caucasians Caucasian? Because caucus or carcass is because it means it's dead. It lies dormant when they come together, and it causes it to lie dormant. And the reason why they can procreate, unlike a donkey and a donkey, is because of the fact that the melanin in the black person is so dominant that it can cause that manifestation of that fetus to materialize. Now, there's also a process that takes place where they have to give injections that they don't even really talk about to a pregnant woman so that when they do come together, there is a certain the white woman's genes will see that something foreign is in her body and will begin to abort itself. The fetus will literally abort itself if it doesn't get that particular injection. I'll talk about that injection a little bit later. So let's see. Uh, 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 it's just so much. It's ridiculous. Now, this type of information is the information that you would get from an HBCU and not a PWI, meaning a historically black college or university versus a predominantly white institution. They don't talk about this kind of stuff. HBCUs, they don't play. They get down and dirty. They give you the curriculum of the state that they're learning at PWIs, and they get down and gritty and tell you about all that stuff that you wouldn't learn about anyplace else. It's really something. Um, Let me see. I don't want to miss anything. Uh, this is where basically another thing where all the stem cell research is coming from, because oftentimes, uh, in their trying to keep their race alive, they have this stem cell research that so that they can incorporate this gene and melanin. They're actually buying and selling melanin and injecting it to themselves. That's what they're doing. Let's see. We uh oh, maybe I shouldn't wait. It's called Rogam. That's the injection that the women women get, who usually white women, always white women actually, because if a black man impregnates a white woman, she cannot go full term. So they will generally, because it'll abort itself, because anytime it sees something foreign, your body period, even if you're not pregnant, if it sees something foreign, it will emit it. It'll let it go. It'll abort it. So that's what they do. They inject them with Rogaine, and they know that it's going to happen, so they do it. It's a process, and you also need to understand that when you read different medical journals and you hear different statistics and whatever stats on health, when it's regarding health, they are not talking about you, honey. They are not talking about us. If your skin looks like this, if you're brown, they are not talking about you. All those studies, they are talking about white folks, not us. The only time that they incorporate us into their studies is like with the Tuskegee Airmen's experiment. The reason why they use black people, other than the fact that they don't care about us, is the fact that they figure these people are the best built, they can tolerate the most. Therefore, if they can tolerate this, then we know that it's at least plausible, it's possible. Okay? So they start with us. And if they see that we can't take it and we die, they damn sure aren't going to try it. So that's what that was about. Not just because, and they are wicked, but not just exclusively because of that. Okay. I just had a problem with almost everything they said because if you look at most things, their calendars, you look at their science, you look at their history, that it doesn't go back further than 6,000 years. And y'all know we've been here longer than 6,000 years. Okay. If they talk about Jesus, they say, oh, he walked the earth 2,000 years ago, but they will not go back further than 6,000 years. The Hebrew calendar, same thing. In fact, I have one. I'm going to use that as the thumbnail to show you a Hebrew calendar and what it looks like. Because a Hebrew calendar is on the lunar cycle, and even it only goes back 6,000 years. And that's just not consistent with what reality is. It just isn't. Let me see. Another thing that I want to touch on is race. When we talk about race and what it is, getting to the next point before the other racer or race person you're racing with is racist. What is the cyst? A race is a race until you put a cyst on it. Okay. What's the cyst? It's like having an ovary, okay, with a cyst on it, or whatever body part with a cyst on it. It's fine until you put a cyst on it. Then it's a problem because the cyst has to be taken off the ovary. The cyst has to be taken off the race. Okay? We were fine being a race, one race, theoretically, until they put cyst in it, racist in it, like racist. That's where that comes from etymologically. Okay? That's where it comes from, you know? So you have to be mindful of etymology. It is volatile, so important. You have to. This is how they're getting these secrets past us. Etymological. What's wrong with my mouth? Etymological. Etymology. To check out that Red Table Talks with Jane Elliott and see if you have a problem personally with the things that she's saying. I think a lot of, I'm sure more than 100% of, well, theoretically, I think that more than 100% of her audience are viewers who are viewing her Red Table Talks, Jada Pinkett Smith's Red Table Talks, would have a problem with the fact that Jane Elliott, said the things that she said. How can it be more than 100%? Because there are so many people who are out there who think they're white that are not. So they go and spill over into the black audience and vice versa. Okay. It's just beyond under, beyond understanding, but please don't take my word for it. Look into it. Look into the fact that 98% of the makeup of a Caucasian and a chimpanzee share 98% symmetry in their makeup. That's not the case for us. That's not the case for brown melanated people. It just is not. Okay. And the reason why I don't use the term black is for a litany of reasons, but primarily given the fact or due to the fact that to be black is to be the sun, because the sun is totally black. That orange/red, what you think you see, is an illusion because of the black that's being emitted. But that's melanin or carbon in its most concentrated state. And back to Solomon, soul of man, soul of man, the son of man, SUN, not SON. Speaking of which, today at midnight, is it midnight yet? No, not yet, quarter till. It will be the end of the fast of the winter solstice when the oil goes up into your, what your mother used to call soft spot, and goes down into your spine and gives you all the gifts that used to be called Santa. Okay. And I'll talk about that, what's going to happen as a result of our having fast these days and mine's continuing to go on. Um, it's going to be extremely interesting, but please take a look at that Red Table Talk, because I said that red table turned gray when that lady started talking, because you're either black or white, and they turned that table gray quick. Okay. I mean, that table turned gray so fast, I was done with it. But like, again, this is nothing against Jada, her mom, or Willow. But I know that at some point when you hear something like that, your God force kicks in. Okay. And you know things aren't right. So um, I usually say, may you be blessed and can continue to elevate. I won't say that, because to be blessed is to be less. And we don't want that. So I will say, may you continue to elevate and rise and do well. And I will talk to you guys soon. Okay? All right. Ashe.